everyone, I am Rebecca from ChemKnits, and right here I think I have 200 grams of Knit Picks Stroll Fingering Weight yarn pre-soaking in tap water that may or may not have vinegar. I don't remember. You'll notice that we've got these super dark zip ties and 100% have color transfer from them onto the yarn. From that one and from this one actually. I had moved it a little bit before I came over to start filming. And so this is something that can happen. It is more likely to happen on these super ultra saturated zip ties that I've used over and over. But it's hard to decide when I should throw them away versus when I should keep using them. And so I thought that I would talk about that for a minute before we go ahead and dye this yarn some kind of fun colorway. Probably incorporating some blues or greens or something to hide that. The total amount of blue there looks really stark against the white backdrop of our bare yarn. But it ultimately won't be, if I add a saturated color there, won't be that big of a deal. But what if I wanted to dye this yarn a yellow? Then it would make a big impact. What if I wanted to speckle on this yarn with red and pink and neon green? Those little bits of blue would stand out more. And so this is something that becomes an issue when your zip ties are very, very saturated. And when they are ultra saturated, it's more likely to happen. Sometimes I'll pre-soak a pan of yarn with a bunch of zip ties and I might see transfer from 1 out of 30. You're gonna have to know the colors that you've used and then see if and when you see this happening. So when do I feel okay using a darker zip tie? I'm more likely to do it if it's not gonna pre-soak for a really long period of time. And if I'm gonna be dyeing the yarn a saturated color that is in the same family as the color of the zip tie. If the zip tie is very, very pink and I'm dyeing a pink colorway, it's probably gonna be okay. And the reason why I still reuse them when they're this dark is that I don't want to create waste. I want to use the tools at my disposal until they aren't usable anymore, which may be the point of this one. But another time I'm likely to reuse zip ties that are this saturated are when I'm doing some resist dyeing. Because typically I dye the yarn with a really dark color all over. And so if the zip tie is already dark, it's gonna absorb some color and I'm not then making a bunch of brand new zip ties really dark from the get-go. So if this is something you're observing happen, you may need to make some changes. And so if I know I'm gonna be dyeing something that I want to have mostly a white backdrop or be a pastel, I might use a brand new zip tie for the first time for that colorway, or else I might pick a zip tie that has a more pastel color that maybe I use with speckling, so it has a few speckles on it, or pick something like that. Editing Rebecca popping in. The zip ties start off as white, and since they're made out of nylon, which has a structure very similar to the protein animal fibers we dye, they can be dyed with acid dyes, and so that happens. And therefore, over time, they accumulate more and more color and eventually hit a point where there's so much color in them that they can't really hold on to it anymore. And so that is the problem here. The other issue, I let this yarn pre-soak for maybe around a week or so. It pre-soaked for a very long time, which is the other situation where I'm more likely to see this type of transfer occur. But in general, I only use the dark zip ties when I'm going to be dyeing something dark over it. Yeah, this is the hard truth about those zip ties. But let's go use up some colors I want to use up in my dye stock collection and create something beautiful. Today is a little bit like leave no stained yarn behind. I have a lot of different colors here. Some are dye stocks at known concentrations, some aren't. Some are things that are close to empty that I just want to use up already, and so we're gonna have some fun. We've got mostly warm tones. We've got a leave no dye behind bottle that I'm not dealing with today. It's not time, but yeah, let's go set up a dye bath and have some fun. Oh, and I also have this water that is a bunch of different purples. We'll use that too. Why not? We're over on my stove. I have some water with a tiny bit of acid and a little bit of purple in it. I've got this water that I showed you already with more purple in it, but ultimately that is very pastel. Now this pan happens to be stained. And so just keep that in mind. I don't know how long this yarn had been pre-soaking, and I was trying to sniff it because I don't know if there was acid in with it or not. And it's kind of bugging me that I don't know, right? I'm leaning toward no, just because I don't really smell the vinegar, but the yarn doesn't smell bad. And you can see we soaked up those little bits of purple in here. So far, so good. I have a feeling I'm mostly gonna wanna use pink because I really, really, really wanna use up one of the 2 dye stocks of pink that I have. But we have the blue in here and now this like purpley stain. It's all good. It's all gonna be great. I'm not actually worried. I'm just gonna try to randomly play. Okay, I know I have a little bit of acid in here. I'm gonna add a little bit of my 0.5% stock solution of Caribbean Blue, and I'm just gonna work it through. This is why not having heat yet is helpful. Now, this is a color that happens to spread. And is it the exact blue that we had up here by the zip ties? No. Can I really see where those are anymore just after adding this like light amount of color? Also, no. It's sort of hidden, and given with the like purple in there, we're getting little bits of washes of color to start. Now, I had this bottle of deep magenta that was down to the dregs. Like there was some powder on the bottom, but really, really not a lot of liquid. And you can see as I bring that in, there is not that much color in there. But we're starting to go somewhere. I still don't know where I'm headed. I have a little bit, like the corner of a bottom of silver gray. And I will rinse this out in a moment, but let's just work this little bit through. I know it looks really dark right now, but it should move through a bit. Ooh, what am I going to want to do with this? I mean, it is fun so far. I'm making this up as I go along. Rinsing out the bottle. Okay, and as we're here, let's go ahead and flip things just in case. Ooh, you know what? I still see we have a ton of blue down there, so maybe I don't actually want to flip it. Let's flip it, but we'll flip it this way. Like, I don't care if some of the blue moves down, but I want to get some colors on the other side. Now, I feel like I'm making a little bit of a hot mess, but I'm also not mad at that. Okay, I'm feeling some Tangelo. Now, this one is not a 1% stock solution. It is much more of a random concentration. And I know, okay, wait, I just went for it and I used like the whole bottle. I know. But give me a minute. Oh man, actually, okay. I know you're like, Rebecca, what are you doing with that orange? But hear me out. I want to add more pink. And this is gonna tone some of these things down. My steamer basket nearby is going crazy. You know, this color may not be everyone's cup of tea. Add some of the orange up here. With the blue, it's gonna like mute itself down. I didn't think we were gonna go warm tone. Okay, I reduced that heat. It should stop rattling now. I didn't think I was gonna go that warm tone, but here's the thing. I have so many more warmed toned colors mixed up right now. And so I'm kind of digging this. And it's really, the orange is really neutralizing that blue. It's making it like brown and tan. Ooh, I love it. I love that I'm just taking this a completely different direction from what I thought. Now, I mean, I do have green, but I think I can now make some progress with one of these deep magentas. Although look at all that powder on the bottom. That's going to be annoying to deal with. But we're going bigger. Did I use all the liquid? I mean, now we've got just the dregs in here, which I don't think I'm going to be pulling from those dregs for this colorway. Now, if I had not layered any blue on at first, because we layered the blue underneath the pink before we did the pink and orange. If I didn't do that blue, then those blue stains would stand out more. But I think because I have that blue layered under here, it should feel more pulled together, but you can see how the purples but I also added gray. The purple and grays are going to add like more muted bits. This is fun and just not where I thought I was going to go. Okay, here's what I'm going to do. Normally I reuse gloves a lot, but those ones were near the end. We're going to start heating this up. This is not where I thought I was going to end up. I thought I was going to pull the green in. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 tablespoons of white vinegar. Maybe more than I need. Not just maybe. Very much more than I probably need. However, I've added a bunch of color. I only have 200 grams of yarn in here, and I really want to make sure things sort of absorb well, and I don't know the water volume. So here's where we are. It's looking very dark down there. I can't tell how much of it is because of like shadow versus we've got more berry color down there because we had more blue, which I'm kind of living for it. So I'm gonna set a timer for 30 minutes and then we'll come back and I'll keep an eye on the like how bubbly things get too. Did I even ever say that this yarn is 75% superwash merino wool, 25% nylon? If I didn't, now I have. Things are nice and warm, and I'm gonna now turn off the heat. And just to see, we do have, oh right, the pan is stained, so I don't know, in fact, how much of that from the staining we have. It looks like all the color is in our yarn. I was gonna say, oh, there might be a little bit of color left. Sometimes it can be hard to make those conclusions with the yarn still in there, especially when I know I had staining around on the pan. I love the berry pink that we have. The like elements of deep colors, which for some people could look like a mistake, but it brings some earthiness into it. You know, maybe I wouldn't have done the purple if I was doing this again, but I like what we have here. And now I just need to set it aside so it can cool completely so we can go ahead and wash it. And it really does look, in my opinion, yeah, like all the color is in our yarn, which is fantastic. Let's wash our yarn. I didn't know where I was gonna go with it when I started, but I knew that I wanted to sort of disguise that blue. And I will say, I don't think I've ever noticed transfer of color from zip ties on the yarn when it's been drying. I think that's only something I've ever noticed while like it's been pre-soaking. I could be wrong though. But one thing I am going to make sure to do, oh, that's just some fuzz. But one thing I am going to make sure to do is keep the zip ties in approximately the same spot, just in case. So let's go ahead and fill this back up with water. All right. Hey, we're looking so good. Maybe there's like I can't tell. Maybe there's a hint of something in the water, but it's really, really not bad. The water is cold. I'll rinse it one more time. All right, let's see how we're doing. All right, looking good to me. So I'm gonna go ahead and put the yarn through my spin dryer and then hang it up to dry. I'm really curious to know what you think of this one. And if you think that these more like brown patches are gonna quote ruin it, or if you like it. I like it. Okay, I'll see you once it's dry. When we look at our finished yarn, it is important to remember that these spots here are not the stain that I had. I mean, it's a stain because what, we had some purple in the dye bath or something and we absorbed it, or I poured some on and just poured color on color on color. I totally didn't remember about the gray. Then I put on the first side before the orange. That's what gave those colors. This is why going back and editing the project is so helpful, because I'm like, oh, it wasn't that little bit of purple. That is what gave that. But actually, I think it adds like a bit of an contrast to it. The blues that we set to cover up and we added more like purple and stuff before the pinks were over here. And I'd be hard pressed to say, I mean, maybe that is some of it, but given that those tones are also in here, I don't think it's that obvious. I mean, maybe that's some of it, but that's also whiter than the color looked before. So that could have been, I forget what else I added over there. The overall technique here today was a very kitchen sink one, as I was trying to use up dyes that I had mixed and do something with yarn that I had stained. And so therefore I wasn't going to use that to get super fine speckles on a white base, because then that blue would stand out more. Now, there are other places in my dye tools where unintended colors can happen. If I don't clean a pot well, sometimes there's some dye sort of stuck around the top ring, and that could transfer. I've also realized that one of my dollar store spoons that I love, that I use when I check how much color is left in the dye bath all the time, one of those has a bunch of blue dye that's sort of stuck in between the metal and the plastic part of the spoon, probably from when I was making dye stocks. And so I'm seeing if I can resolve that, or if that spoon, after 8 some years, has to retire. But things can happen, and so it's worth storing things that you're going to use to dye yarn always in a secondary container, just in case, which I do, thankfully. And that spoon didn't stain any yarn, but I noticed some blue dye on my protected work surface, and I was like, that's weird. I don't remember having blue dye right now. But anyway, that's not something I recorded. But the yarn is fun, and I'm really loving this color combination. Let me go twist it up. There are some of you that I know are really going to hate the earthiness in the brown that is a bit on the orange. And the way to avoid this would be if I covered that purplish color over with a pink or a blue, you wouldn't have ended up with something as muddy or feeling darker or deeper. But because the blue in it is sort of at the other end of the color wheel to the orange, that's what's giving us a color that is muddier and more brown. This is the reason why I will not dye blue streaks over my auburn hair, because I know it's just going to make my hair more brown. And that's not what I want, right? I like the warmth and coppery in my hair. But that's a whole other digression. I am Rebecca from ChemKnits, and I love to play with color and yarn. And I also really like to be honest with all of you about the successes and failures and mistakes and how I pivot everything in my journey. And that's how we're over 600 episodes in to the Dye Pot Weekly series. And I have over 1,000 videos dyeing yarn here on my channel. And sure, sometimes I repeat colorways, but a lot of times I'm doing something that is different and I haven't necessarily done before in that exact way. And so if you love the journey, please subscribe and turn on notifications so you never miss a new video. And if you want to support the content here, you can join to become a channel member and get badges and fun emotes you can use, or you can head over to the ChemKnits Creations Etsy shop, which is filled with hand-dyed yarn that's been featured in my videos. And so not only are you supporting the channel, but you get to have some yarn where you can watch exactly how it was created. And that makes it that much more special and cool. Thank you so much for watching.